They didn't call it a village anymore, because villages have names, and names belong to places that weren't erased by fire. Up in the mountains, the survivors rebuilt what they could and called it only one thing: home. Then a man appeared on the path. No horse, no guards, no clan crest, just a bag of tools, and a face that made old men reach for blades they swore they'd buried, because they recognized him, not him. His blood? His father was the one who burned this place to the ground. His father was the reason there are 43 stones, and not 43 families. So when the stranger stepped into the ash-line border, the question wasn't who he was. The question was why he came back. He didn't bring a torch. He brought tools. And he said he wasn't here to destroy what remained. He was here to build, which sounds noble until you realize something colder. No one climbs back to the scene of a massacre just to feel better. What did his father leave behind in the ruins? That the son is desperate to find before the village decides whether he lives or dies? Because by the end, you'll understand the real reason the village lost its name, and why letting him rebuild might cost them the one thing they've protected for 20 years: their right to hate. Before we continue, if you want more stories like this, subscribe. It tells YouTube to keep bringing you these tailies. And comment, what city are you watching from? Now, back to the story. The path was overgrown, but still visible. Kenji had expected it to be erased entirely. 20 years of rain and wind and neglect should have swallowed it. But feet had walked here since the burning. Feet carrying supplies, carrying hope, carrying the stubborn will to exist in a place where existence had nearly been extinguished. He stopped at the first marker. A stone, weathered but upright, with characters carved deep enough to survive the seasons. Here stood the house of Moriyama. 3 souls taken. Further up, another stone. Here stood the house of Fujita. 5 souls taken, and another. Here stood the house of Endo. 7 souls taken. The stones continued along the path like a spine of grief. Kenji counted them as he walked. 43 stones, 43 families. Over 200 names that his father had erased from the world. His legs wanted to stop. His chest wanted to turn back. Every step forward was a step deeper into a shame that had no bottom. But he kept walking. He had not come this far to run. The new village appeared suddenly, emerging from the tree line like a held breath finally released. It was smaller than the old one. 15 houses, maybe 20, built in the traditional style, but with the slight imperfections of self-taught hands. A communal well at the center. A small shrine at the eastern edge. Fields carved into the hillside, stubborn with late-season vegetables. People stopped what they were doing as Kenji approached. A woman carrying water. A man repairing a fence. Children who had been playing in the dirt, now frozen mid-motion. Strangers did not come here. The path led nowhere else. Anyone walking up this mountain had a reason. Kenji stopped at the edge of the village and bowed deeply. "I am a carpenter," he said. "I am looking for work. I can repair roofs, build furniture, fix anything that needs fixing. I ask only for food and a place to sleep." Silence. The man at the fence set down his tools. He was old, perhaps 55, with the weathered look of someone who had survived things that should have killed him. His eyes moved across Kenji's face, searching. "We do not need carpenters. Then I will work in the fields, carry water, clean the shrine. Whatever is needed. We do not need strangers." Kenji remained bowed. "I understand. But I have traveled far, and I have nowhere else to go. I ask only for a chance to be useful." The old man's eyes narrowed. Something flickered in them. Recognition? Suspicion? Kenji could not tell. "Where do you come from?" "The eastern provinces." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." The old man studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to the woman with the water buckets. "Yuki, what do you think?" The woman set down her burden and walked closer. She was younger than the man, perhaps late 30s, but her face carried its own weight of years. When she stepped into the light, Kenji saw the scars. They covered the left side of her face, twisting down her neck and disappearing beneath her collar. Burn scars, old and deep and permanent. Her eyes met him without flinching. "He has a familiar look," she said quietly. "Something about the jaw, the way he stands." Kenji's heart stopped. "Many men look similar," he managed. "Many men do not come to this village offering to work for nothing." She circled him slowly, studying. "Why here? Of all the villages in Japan, why this one?" "Because my father burned it. Because I cannot sleep without seeing flames. Because I have run from this place for 20 years, and the running has to stop." "I heard there was a need," he said. "I wanted to help." "From whom did you hear this?" "Travelers, merchants. Word spreads." "Word of a village with no name, hidden in mountains that lead nowhere?" Yuki shook her head. "You are lying. The question is why." That single question would change everything. But Kenji could not answer it. Not yet. A crowd had gathered now. Perhaps 30 people, emerging from houses and fields, drawn by the tension in the air. Kenji felt their eyes like physical weight, measuring him, judging him, looking for something they could not quite name. An old woman pushed to the front of the crowd. 70 at least, bent with age, but moving with surprising speed. She stopped directly before Kenji and reached up to grab his chin, turning his face toward the light. Her fingers were rough. Her grip was iron. "Look at me," she commanded. Kenji obeyed. Her eyes were milky with age, but sharp with memory. "I know this face," she whispered. "I have seen it in my nightmares for 20 years." Kenji's blood went cold. "You are mistaken, grandmother. I have never been here before. Not you," her grip tightened, "but someone with your blood. Someone with your bones." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "This is Nakamura blood. This is the face of the demon who burned our village." The word Nakamura moved through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Murmurs became shouts. Hands reached for tools, for rocks, for anything that could become a weapon. Kenji did not run. "Yes," he said. His voice cut through the chaos, quiet but clear. "Nakamura Takeo was my father." Silence crashed down like a wave. "I am his son, Kenji. I was 12 years old when he led the raid on this village. I did not participate. But I carry his name. I carry his shame. I carry the weight of what he did." The old woman released his chin as if burned. "Then you have come to die," said the man from the fence. "Tanaka Ryo, the leader of survivors, the keeper of grudges. Your father killed my wife, my sons, my reason for living. I have waited 20 years for justice. And now you walk into my village and offer to fix my roof? I have not come to die, but I will not run if death is what you choose. Then you are a fool." "Perhaps." Kenji met Ryo's eyes without flinching. "But I am a fool who knows how to build. And I am offering to spend whatever life I have left rebuilding what my father destroyed." Ryo stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him like water around a stone. He was not a large man, but his presence filled the space. 20 years of grief had compressed into something dense and cold. A hatred refined by time into something almost pure. "Your father did not just kill," Ryo said softly. "He made it slow. He gathered us in the square and made us watch while his samurai cut down the men first, then the elderly, then the women who tried to run, then the children who could not." Kenji's stomach twisted. He had heard the stories, but hearing them here, from the mouth of a survivor, made them real in a way they had never been before. "I know. You know nothing." Ryo's voice cracked with sudden fury. You were safe in your castle, eating your fine food, sleeping in your soft bed, while we dug graves for our families with our bare hands. You know nothing of what we suffered. You are right. I cannot know. I can only try to help. Help? Ryo laughed, a sound without joy. What help can you offer? Can you bring back my wife? Can you give me back my sons? Can you make me forget the sound of their screaming? No. Then what use are you? Kenji had no answer. This was the question he had asked himself for 20 years. The question that had driven him here, to this impossible place, to face these impossible people. I can build, he said finally. I can work. I can give you my labor, my sweat, my remaining years. It is not enough. It will never be enough. But that is all I have. Ryo reached for the knife at his belt. Your blood would be a better payment. Kenji did not move, did not raise his hands, did not try to defend himself. Let it come, he thought. If this is justice, let it come. Stop. The voice was Yuki's. She stepped between Ryo and Kenji, her scarred face set with an expression that defied easy reading. Step aside, Yuki. No, this is not your decision. It is all our decisions. We are a village, not a mob. We decide together, not in rage. Ryo's hand trembled on his knife. His father burned you, left you scarred forever. How can you defend him? I am not defending him. I am defending us. Yuki turned to face the crowd. If we kill this man in anger, without thought, without deliberation, how are we different from the soldiers who killed without mercy? We survived because we were better than them. If we lose that now, they win. Even from the grave, they win. The crowd wavered. Ryo's hand stayed on his knife, and Kenji realized his life now hung on the words of a woman he had never met, whose scars were his father's signature. The argument lasted an hour. Voices rose and fell. Fists were shaken. Tears were shed. The old wounds of the village opened fresh, bleeding grief that had never fully clotted. Kenji stood silent through all of it. He did not defend himself, did not plead for mercy, did not explain or justify or excuse. He simply existed, a target for rage that had waited 2 decades for release. Finally, Yuki raised her hand for silence. We cannot decide this tonight. The anger is too fresh. The memories are too raw. She turned to Kenji. You will sleep in the storage shed at the edge of the village. 2 men will stand watch outside the door until morning. You will not leave. You will not speak to anyone. At dawn, we will gather and decide your fate together. And if I run, then Ryo and 3 others will hunt you down and kill you in the forest. We have become skilled at survival. You would not make it far. Kenji nodded slowly. I understand. One more thing. Yuki stepped closer, her voice dropping so only he could hear. When you faced Ryo's knife, you did not flinch. You did not try to save yourself. Why? Because I did not come here to live. I came here to pay. Pay for what your father did. Pay for what I failed to stop. Yuki studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not softness, not forgiveness, but perhaps the first crack in the wall of automatic hatred. The storage shed is that way. There is water inside and a blanket. It will be cold, but you will survive until morning. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. I have not decided whether to argue for your life or your death. She turned and walked back toward the village. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly, with many backward glances at the stranger who carried a demon's face. Kenji walked to the storage shed alone. The storage shed was small, perhaps 10 feet square, filled with farming tools and bags of seed rice. It smelled of earth and iron, and the particular mustiness of spaces rarely opened. Kenji cleared a corner for himself and sat with his back against the wall. Through the gaps in the wooden slats, he could see the village. Lanterns flickering in windows, shadows moving behind paper screens. The ordinary rhythms of life continuing despite the extraordinary disruption his arrival had caused. These people rebuilt from ashes. They carved fields from the wilderness. They raised children in a place synonymous with death. And his father had done this to them, had taken everything they had and burned it for reasons Kenji still did not fully understand. The official explanation was rebellion. The village had harbored enemies of the Lord, had provided food and shelter to insurgents who threatened the established order. The massacre was justified, necessary, legal. But Kenji had seen his father's face when he returned from that night, had seen the emptiness in his eyes, the way his hands trembled when he thought no one was watching. Whatever had happened in this village had broken something into Takeo that never healed. 3 years later, he was dead. Officially illness. Unofficially his own hand. Kenji had found him in the garden, his father's sword still wet with blood. The inheritance passed to Kenji. The castle, the lands, the title, the legacy of a monster. He rejected all of it, walked away at 15 with nothing but the clothes on his back, wandered for 17 years, working, building, trying to become someone other than his father's son. And now, finally, he has returned to the beginning, the place where it all started, the wound that would never heal. I cannot undo what he did. I cannot bring back the dead, but I can give what remains of my life to this place. I can let them kill me if that is what they need, or I can work until my hands bleed and my back breaks, building what he destroyed. Either way, the running ends here. Footsteps outside, soft, deliberate, trying not to be heard. Kenji tensed, but did not move. If they had come to kill him in the night, so be it. He would not fight. The door creaked open. A figure slipped inside, carrying a small oil lamp. Not Ryo, too young, too slender. A man in his late 20s, with a face that seemed caught between fear and curiosity. You are the son of Nakamura Takeo, the young man said. Not a question. Yes, I am Ishida Taro. The name meant nothing to Kenji, but something in the way Taro stood, the way he looked at Kenji without the burning hatred of the others, suggested a different story. You were here that night? I was 8 years old. Taro set the lamp on a barrel and crouched across from Kenji. I should be dead. Everyone in my family died. My parents, my grandparents, my 2 sisters. I was the only one left. How did you survive? Taro's expression flickered. I do not know. Not fully. I remember hiding. I remember a barrel, the smell of fish. I remember a hand pushing me inside, a voice telling me to stay silent no matter what I heard. He paused, something moving behind his eyes. The hand wore an armored glove, the kind your father's samurai wore. Kenji's breath caught. A samurai saved you? It makes no sense. Why would one of the killers save a child? Why just me, out of all the children in the village? I have asked myself this question for 20 years. Do you remember his face? No, only the glove, only the voice. Taro leaned forward. But when I saw you today, something happened. Something I cannot explain. A feeling like standing at the edge of a memory that will not fully form. Kenji's mind raced. A samurai from his father's company, saving a child during the massacre, risking everything for a single act of mercy in an ocean of cruelty. Who? Why? I do not know who saved you, Kenji said carefully. My father had 40 men under his command. I was a child. I did not know them all, but you might know their names. You might know which ones had families, which ones might have hesitated, which ones might have seen a child and felt something human. You want me to help you find the man who saved your life? I want to understand. Taro's voice cracked. I want to know why I survived when everyone else died. I want to know if it meant something, or if it was just a random chance. Kenji studied the young man, the desperation in his eyes, the hunger for meaning that 20 years of survival had not satisfied. If I live past dawn, Kenji said, I will help you find the answer, whatever it takes. But the answer, when it came, would split the village in two and force Kenji to decide what kind of man he would become. 2 hours before dawn, another visitor came. This time, Kenji heard her approach without surprise. Yuki moved with the deliberate steps of someone who had made a decision and was committed to seeing it through. She entered without asking permission and stood looking down at him. You have not slept. No. Afraid of what morning will bring? Thinking about what I should say. Whether words matter. Whether anything I do can make a difference. Yuki lowered herself to sit across from him, her movements careful, as if her body still remembered old pain. I was 18 when the soldiers came, she said. I was considered beautiful then. Many young men wanted to marry me. My father had to turn them away, one after another. Kenji said nothing. He understood that she was not seeking response. She was seeking a witness. When the killing started, I ran to my family's house. My parents were already dead. My younger brother was dying. I held him while he bled out, and then the fire started. She touched her scars absently, tracing the boundary between damaged skin and whole. I was trapped under a fallen beam. The flames were climbing toward me. I knew I was going to die. I accepted it. I even welcomed it. What happened? I do not know. I woke 3 days later in a cave, my wounds wrapped in clean bandages. An old woman was caring for me. She said a man had brought me to her in the night and paid her to keep me alive. A man? She did not see his face. He wore a helmet with a mask, but she saw the crest on his armor. Kenji's blood went cold. What crest? Yuki's eyes met his. The Nakamura crest. The same crest your father wore. If this story has gripped you, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that tales of guilt and redemption deserve to be told. And if you want more stories from old Japan, subscribe and join our community. Kenji's mind reeled. His father, the monster who ordered the massacre, the demon who watched children die. That sane man had saved Yuki from the flames, had carried her to safety, paid for her care, then returned to his castle as if nothing had happened. You are certain of the crest? The old woman described it precisely. 3 maple leaves in a circle. Your family's mark. Yuki's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly in her lap. I have spent 20 years trying to understand. The man who burned my family also saved my life. How do I hate him? How do I forgive him? How do I live with both truths in the same body? Kenji had no answer. His image of his father, already fractured, now shattered into pieces that did not fit together. He ordered the killing. He watched it happen. And then, in the midst of it, he saved at least 2 people. Yuki, Taro, perhaps others. Why? There is something else, Yuki said. Something I have never told anyone. Not even Ryo. She reached into her sleeve and withdrew a folded paper, yellowed with age, soft from years of handling. The old woman gave me this before she died. She said the man left it with her, in case I survived. Kenji took the paper with trembling fingers. The handwriting inside was elegant, formal. The hand of someone educated, someone powerful. He read, I cannot undo what I have done. The orders came from above, and I was too weak to refuse them. But I can save what little my conscience allows. This woman did nothing wrong. She should not have been here. None of them should have been here. If she lives, tell her that the man who burned her village was also burned. Tell her that some fires consume the one who lights them. Tell her that I am sorry, though I know sorry means nothing. Tell her to live. That is the only vengeance that matters. The letter bore no signature, but at the bottom, a small mark. 3 maple leaves in a circle. His father's personal seal. The demon who burned the village had also tried to save it. But why? What had happened that night that broke him so completely? Dawn was approaching. Through the gaps in the shed walls, Kenji could see the sky lightening from black to deep blue. Soon the village would gather. Soon they would decide whether he lived or died. But all he could think about was the letter in his hands. My father was not a good man, he said slowly. He was cruel, distant, obsessed with honor and duty above all else. He never showed me affection, never praised me, never seemed to care whether I existed. But I remember one night when I was 11. I could not sleep, so I walked through the castle. I found him in the garden, alone, staring at the moon. When he saw me, he did not send me away. He just said, "Kenji, do you know what it means to follow orders you know are wrong?" Yuki leaned forward slightly. I said no. I was a child. I did not understand. He nodded and said, "Good. I hope you never do." Then he sent me to bed. I did not think about it again until years later. After the massacre, yes, he came back different, hollow, like something had been scooped out of him. He barely spoke for months. And then, 3 years later, he was dead. Kenji folded the letter carefully and offered it back to Yuki. I cannot explain what he did. I cannot reconcile the monster with the man who wrote these words. But I know this. He was broken by what happened here. Whatever he did, whatever he ordered, it destroyed him too. That does not excuse him. No, nothing excuses him. But it tells me that somewhere inside the demon, there was still a man. A man who knew the difference between right and wrong, even when he chose wrong. Yuki took the letter and held it for a moment, her scarred fingers tracing the edges. I have hated your father for 20 years. I have dreamed of watching him die slowly, screaming the way my brother screamed. But I have also wondered, in my weakest moments, what I would say to the man who pulled me from the fire, whether I would thank him or curse him. And now I do not know. You carry his face, his blood, his name. When I look at you, I see the demon who destroyed my life, but I also see the man who saved it. How do I hold both in my heart without breaking? Kenji had no answer. This was the question he had carried for 20 years. The question that had driven him across Japan, through villages and cities, through years of anonymous labor and sleepless nights. How do you live when your blood is poison? How do you exist when your very face is a reminder of horror? I do not know, he admitted. But I know I am tired of running from it. I am tired of pretending I can escape what I am. I came here to face it, whatever that means, to let you decide what my life is worth. The sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. The villagers gathered in the square, just as they had gathered 20 years ago when the soldiers came. But this time, the man at the center was not an executioner. He was a penitent, waiting for judgment. Kenji stood with his hands at his sides, facing the crowd. Ryo stood at the front, his knife visible at his belt. His face was stone, but his eyes burned with 20 years of compressed grief. Behind him, the others arranged themselves in a rough semicircle, old and young, scarred and whole, survivors and those born after, who knew the story only through the nightmares of their parents. Yuki stood apart, her expression unreadable. And Taro, the young man who had visited in the night, watched from the edge of the crowd with something like hope in his eyes. We have deliberated, Ryo said, his voice carrying across the silent square. We have argued through the night about what to do with you. Some say kill you, some say drive you away. Some say make you suffer as we have suffered. Kenji did not respond, did not defend himself, simply waited. But before we decide, I have questions. Ryo stepped closer. Your father gave the orders. He led the soldiers. He watched the killing with his own eyes. Why? What reason could justify the murder of 200 innocent people? The official reason was rebellion. The village was accused of harboring enemies of the Lord. There were no rebels here. We were farmers, fishermen. We had nothing to do with politics or war. I know. Then why? Kenji hesitated. This was the part of the story he had pieced together over years, from fragments and rumors and the drunken confessions of former soldiers. The Lord my father served needed a demonstration. There had been unrest in the neighboring provinces. He wanted to send a message about the cost of defiance. Your village was chosen because it was remote, because it had no powerful allies, because no one would avenge you. The crowd stirred with anger. Ryo's hand moved toward his knife. We died for a message? Our children burned so that some lord could frighten his enemies? Yes. And your father agreed to this? He was ordered to. Refusing would have meant his own death, his family's disgrace, the destruction of everything he had built. Kenji paused. I am not making excuses. There are no excuses. But you asked why, and that is the answer. He chose his duty over your lives. But there was more to the story. A piece that Kenji had only learned tonight. A piece that might change everything. There is something else, Kenji said. Something I did not know until last night. The crowd fell silent. Some of you were saved, not by accident. By choice. Someone wearing Nakamura armor pulled survivors from the flames and hid them where the soldiers would not find them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Confused glances exchanged. Yuki survived because a man in Nakamura armor carried her to safety and paid for her care. Taro survived because someone in Nakamura armor hid him in a barrel and told him to stay silent. Taro stepped forward, his face pale. How do you know this? Yuki told me. She has a letter written by the man who saved her. It bears my father's personal seal. Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. My father ordered the massacre. But during the killing, something broke in him. He could not stop it, could not undo what he had started. But he saved who he could. 2 people that I know of. Perhaps more. Ryo's expression twisted with confusion and rage. You are saying the demon who murdered my family also saved others? That he felt guilt while watching children die? I am saying that people are more complicated than the stories we tell about them. My father was a monster. He was also, in some small way, still human. Both things are true. Neither cancels the other. This changes nothing. Ryo's voice shook. My wife is still dead. My sons are still dead. A moment of conscience does not wash away an ocean of blood. I know. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking you to see the full truth before you judge me for his sins. The crowd wavered. The simple story of the demon and victims had become something more complex, something harder to navigate. Yuki stepped forward, and the crowd parted for her. She walked slowly to the center of the square and stood beside Kenji, facing the others. Her scarred face caught the morning light, the damaged skin a permanent reminder of what had been lost. I have more reason than most to want this man dead, she said. His father burned me, left me marked forever, took everyone I loved. She paused, letting the words settle. But his father also saved me, carried me from the flames when he could have let me burn, paid for my healing, left me a letter begging me to live. She turned to look at Kenji. I have spent 20 years hating a man who was already dead, 20 years poisoning myself with rage that could never reach its target. And now his son stands before me, offering his life as payment for a debt he did not create. Her voice hardened. If we kill him, what do we gain? Another death, another body, another grave in a village already full of graves. We become what his father was. Killers who justify murder with righteous anger. He deserves to die, Ryo said. Perhaps, but do we deserve to become murderers? Yuki shook her head. I will not carry that weight. I have carried enough. The crowd looked at Ryo. He was their leader, their voice, the keeper of their collective grief. His decision would carry the weight of law. He stood motionless, his hand still resting on his knife, his eyes fixed on Kenji with an intensity that could have burned through stone. 20 years, he said softly. 20 years I have waited for justice. I have dreamed of finding the man responsible and making him pay. I have imagined it so many times that it feels more real than anything else in my life. He stepped closer to Kenji, close enough to strike. And now you stand before me. Not the demon himself, but his blood. His face, close enough to touch, close enough to kill. His hand tightened on the knife. I should do it. Every night for 20 years, I have told myself I would do it if I ever got the chance. My wife would want it. My sons would want it. Justice demands it. His voice cracked. But when I look at you, I do not see a demon. I see a man carrying a weight he did not choose. A man who walked into a village of his enemies and offered his life without fighting. A man who could have lived in comfort on his father's wealth and instead spent 20 years building things with his hands. Ryo's grip on the knife loosened. If I kill you, I become what your father was. A man who kills because he can. Because his anger tells him it is right. And I have spent too many years trying to be better than that. He released the knife entirely, letting his hand fall to his side. You will live. Not because I forgive you. Not because I have forgotten what your father did. But because killing you would mean the demons win. And I refuse to let them win. The crowd exhaled as one. Kenji bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the ground. Thank you. Do not thank me. Ryo's voice was cold. You are not welcome here. You are not forgiven. You are simply not worth damning myself for. Take your tools and leave. Do not return. Kenji remained bowed. With respect, I cannot leave. What? I did not come here to escape death. I came here to pay for what my blood did. If you will not let me pay with my life, let me pay with my labor. Let me work. Let me build. Let me give you whatever years I have left. Ryo stared at him with disbelief. You want to stay? Here? Among people who hate you. I want to earn the right to be here. However long it takes, whatever it costs. And if I refuse? Kenji raised his head and met Ryo's eyes. Then I will camp outside the village and work anyway. I will repair the road, rebuild the bridge, and clear the fields. I will do whatever needs doing, whether you accept it or not. You can kill me or you can ignore me. But you cannot make me leave. The silence stretched. Then Taro stepped forward, the young man whose life had been saved by a gloved hand in the darkness. I will work with him. The crowd turned to stare. Taro, what are you doing? Someone saved me that night. Someone in Nakamura armor. I have spent my whole life wondering why. Now I know that the same man who ordered the killing also saved lives. I do not understand it, but I want to. He walked to stand beside Kenji. If he stays, I stay with him. If he builds, I build with him. Maybe together we can find meaning in what happened. Or maybe we will just build something new. Either way, it is better than carrying hate until it poisons us. An older woman, one Kenji did not recognize, stepped forward. My daughter was saved too. She never knew by whom. She died last winter, but before she passed, she told me she always felt she was spared for a reason. She joined Taro beside Kenji. One by one, others followed. Not all, not even most. But enough. 7 people standing with the son of the demon who had destroyed their world. Ryo watched with something between disgust and wonder. You are all fools. Perhaps, Yuki said. She had not moved from her place beside Kenji. But we are fools who have chosen to build and destroy. Can you say the same? Ryo looked at her for a long moment, at the scars on her face, at the strange peace in her eyes. Then he turned and walked away. The bridge was finished. Kenji stood at its center, feeling the solid wood beneath his feet. 3 months of work, cutting timber, shaping planks, driving posts into the riverbed. His hands were calloused, his back ached constantly, and he had never felt more alive. The village had not forgiven him. Some still spat when he passed. Some still refused to speak his name. Ryo had not exchanged a single word with him since that first morning. But they had stopped trying to drive him away. They had let him work. They had watched the bridge rise, plank by plank, and something had shifted in the way they looked at him. Not acceptance, not yet, perhaps not ever, but acknowledgement that he was there, that he was working, that he was trying. Hana, the smallest child in the village, appeared at the bridge's edge. She was 6 years old, born long after the massacre, knowing nothing of the old hatred except what her parents taught her. "Did you build this?" she asked. "With help. Taro and the others. It is a good bridge. Thank you." She studied him with the fearless curiosity of children. "My grandmother says your father was a bad man." "He was. She says you came here to make things better." "I am trying." Hana considered this. "My grandmother also says people can change. That what your father did does not have to be what you do." Kenji knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "Your grandmother is very wise." Hana smiled, then ran off to play with the other children, her bare feet pounding across the new bridge. Kenji watched her go. The debt was not paid. It could never be paid. But for the first time in 20 years, the weight felt bearable. He picked up his tools and walked toward the village. There was more work to do. There always would be. If your heart is still open for one more tale, follow the card on your screen. I've chosen another journey that pairs beautifully with this one. Whenever you're ready, I'll be waiting in the next story.